In this week's episode, I talked to Dr. Joel Gould, who specializes in treating sleep disorders like sleep apnea and snoring with a holistic lifestyle approach. Now, this is a part two of a two-part podcast. In part one, we do a deep dive into a particle called deuterium, which greatly affects how quickly we age. So if you haven't seen that one, definitely go back and check that one out. But here in part two, as I said, we get into the sleep disorders and how he treats them with nutrition and improved lifestyle, as well as the role of vitamin D in our immunity and longevity. So you're definitely going to want to check this one out.
Every enzyme in your body, many enzymes are powered, and they're powered by ATP. Now, as these enzymes do their reactions, they're pretty quick, but the rate of reaction will start to slow through the kinetic isotope effect. And you can Google these things. These are real scientific terms. The kinetic isotope effect is that if you have an enzyme, this enzyme could be in your body. This could be glutathione. This could be superoxide dismutase, an enzyme you want. As that enzyme begins to get more deuterium replacing the hydrogens, and deuterium and hydrogen will exchange based on the amount, the extra deuterium atoms that start to get incorporated into this enzyme, which is just nothing other than a very well folded protein, this thing starts to resonate slower and it starts to slow down its rate of reaction. And this is a real thing. So basically, that's why deuterium is aging. As too much deuterium builds up in you, it slows down your biological processes by this kinetic isotope effect. And this affects every single thing in your body. So this is the most important thing that anyone could be thinking about is, how do I limit my deuterium? What can I change in my lifestyle to have the lowest level of deuterium? And, basically this goes from, and this is a different perspective. This is a different way to look at health. And it is very important when it comes to sleep, because we can go into sort of why sleep and deuterium are important, to understand that link. But basically understanding that how our biology works, take everything that you have in your body. Hydrocarbons are both petroleum and foods that we eat. They're hydrogen and carbon together. Everything in your body has these hydrogen atoms, and some of them are deuterium. Some places in your body are more likely to have the deuterium swapped in for the hydrogen, and some are less. The internal part of an enzyme that's all rolled in on itself, those areas are not going to get deuterated. And that's the cholesterol in your skin can get deuterated. It's called deuterated cholesterol. And that's a real thing. That's part of what I talk about, how eating too many carbohydrates can lower your vitamin D level.
That makes sense. Okay.
Okay. So, a lot of information there.
It is a lot. But it's I think something most people have not heard about. So at least it starts opening the door to them looking more into it, understanding what they're looking for as something that they don't want. They don't want, their bodies want to limit. Right? It's about the dose. Well, right. Yeah. It's a dose of it. Right. So
the dose makes the poison. These are some of my catchphrases. And there's other factors. I talk a lot about glyphosate, and it's something that people don't always want to get into, which is fine. But deuterium and glyphosate work together. They're villains, and they break you down.
The toxin in Monsanto's favorite chemicals, and so they're all over our food. Roundup and so forth, and the pesticides. But the vitamin, now, as far as we started with sleep, vitamin D and K2. I know those work together. Yes. What I have not been able to understand is that mechanism or connection between the vitamin D and the sleep apnea and sleep. So if you can help unpack that is okay.
It's a lot. Okay. So it's a lot of stuff. So let's just think that, I've given a lot of background information. Mm-hmm. And so just understand that how we view our health and how we view medicine, it's kind of not right. Okay. Now
that's very kind of you to say. Well, of not right. It's wrong. Right?
It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And to anyone, again, I sort of put these calls out to anyone. I'm looking at the camera. To anyone listening to this, if you are suffering from autoimmune disease of any kind, if you are obese and not happy, if you don't sleep normally, and you don't know and track your vitamin D level, you need to start immediately. Okay. So vitamin D, we'll go into that topic. And just, I want my patients to have a vitamin D level over 50 always. So this is not medical advice. I've got lots of videos out there. If someone wants to look at my stuff, I'm not the only person saying this. I've gotten criticism for saying, I discovered I'm just trying to help people get healthy.
Mm.
So this is, I guess if I tell you the story of what happened to me, it'll make more sense. So
Okay.
here I am, I feel like I'm educated. I feel like I'm well read, doing all these things, and I'm sick. I've got Crohn's disease, and anyone who has Crohn's disease, this ruined my life. I created a life around bathrooms because I could never be more than 100 yards from a bathroom. Was just my existence, and no big deal. I may do. It was not the worst thing in the world. Some people have other issues that are worse. My pain was never that bad. I was only hospitalized once and never had my colon removed.
Mm.
But so I had autoimmune disease, and by the age of 48, I was having anxiety and depression, and I was clenching and grinding my teeth, and I had terrible neck pain. And I wouldn't for a million years think that I had sleep apnea, but I found out by accident I had sleep apnea. And I got into this and I was like, well, what does this have to do with grinding your teeth? Well, the part of the brain that regulates the airway during the paralysis of sleep needs to be pretty sophisticated, because you have to be totally paralyzed to repair your body during sleep, but you still have to be able to breathe, swallow, and not choke. So it's a very specific set of nerves that are in the brainstem that control this. So the bruxism is a signal that the neural signal, no bueno, this is bad news. If you grind your teeth during sleep, you have some issues. But if you grind your teeth or catch yourself clenching during the day, you absolutely have way too low vitamin D.
Mm.
And this is where it all comes together. So we talked about gene expression. Vitamin D goes to your DNA. It's one of the epigenetic moderators. Vitamin D will go to your DNA and will create a special complex to decide which genes are going to get copied. And that will depend on the cofactors, whether it's vitamin K2, vitamin A. This is biology that has not been well studied, because the funding for this type of stuff, it goes through big pharma. And this is research that's really a long time. It needs to be done. So vitamin D isn't a vitamin. It tells your body which genes to copy. Basically, yeah. And one of the genes that it activates is something to make cathepsidins. Cathepsidins are antimicrobial proteins. They're very similar to, there's like interleukins and cytokines and all these fancy names, but
Right.
defensins are antimicrobial proteins that all of your immune cells and all of your barrier cells should have.
Yeah.
If you don't have enough of those, you become susceptible to the microbes, whether it's viruses, fungus, or bacteria. All right. So that idea that these special proteins are made, these are really critical because they will regulate which microbes that we have on us and in us. And everyone's really hearing about the gut microbiome. There's the oral microbiome, there's the lung microbiome. Anywhere in your body where microbes exist, everywhere, has a microbiome. The most important one is the gastrointestinal microbiome. Why? Because that's our seasonal adaptation organ. These microbes, their DNA and the genes that they use to make proteins outnumbers ours 100 to 1. So we use those chemical products. We use their waste products. We use their chemicals. This is, we're working together. It's synergistic. It's symbiosis, okay? So when it comes to that gut microbiome, this is what regulates most of our cellular functions, including the immune system and sleep. We have all these incredible Paneth cells and all these really incredible biological features in our digestive system that's supposed to be sampling stuff that's coming in from the external environment. This evolved to keep us healthy. If you do not have a high enough vitamin D level, you will not keep the healthy microbiome. And in the old days, when our vitamin D level was low, it was winter, and hunter-gatherers who would be looking for food, presumably it's winter, that microbiome would shift. The bacteria that would overgrow are the ones that would favor fat storage, powering down and trying to take advantage of whatever was available through our food. So when you raise your vitamin D level, you're going to bring a whole different type of microbe to you. And an evolutionary level, in my opinion, is over 50. I like my patients always over 50 if possible. So when I was really at my worst, found that I had sleep apnea, I found this particular neurologist, Dr. Stasha Gomanek, and this was her discovery. Vitamin D did two powerful things. Number one, it allowed you to make a special enzyme in your brain called choline acetyltransferase. That's the enzyme that makes acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is one of the very important neurotransmitters of the autonomic nervous system. Very important. The other thing is that having that evolutionary level of vitamin D allows you to create the right gut microbiome, which makes a lot of your vitamins, and the important ones are the B vitamins. They're the ones who are running the electron transport chain. Mother Nature doesn't do stupid stuff. She has all these different bits and pieces. B vitamins are used for everything. They help repair your DNA. They help you to detoxify toxins. Your B vitamins are really critical, and they come and always came from the gut microbiome. If you're a hunter-gatherer and there's no green leafy vegetables, where are you getting your vitamins from? You're going to die. How do bears spend, a couple of months in the ground? Well, they're producing the right chemicals. They're powered down. Their metabolism is low. So humans have this winter setting. I call it human power saving mode. And it's when you lower your metabolism. And that's where I lived most of my life, stuck in human power saving mode. I was obese. I was one of those bigger guys, and I just tried everything. I just couldn't get fit. There was nothing that I could do. So I discovered that I had sleep apnea. I discovered Dr. Stasha Gomanek, and seek her out. She's incredible. And then that's when I started to find all these other things. Right away, I found another scientist by the name of Stephanie Seneff, who I learned about vitamin D sulfate. And this is all part of the story, the behind me. It's very complex. Again, that's why there's cartoon characters. So here I'm a sick person most of my life, and I find out my vitamin D level is well below 20. I raise it to 80, and everything that's wrong with me disappears. I lose 15 pounds just like that, just melts off. And I stop grinding my teeth, and I start to feel like a human being. And I go and do the research, and I see that this is known. I'm not the first person to discover this. I'm somebody who could maybe help people understand that your doctor doesn't know this. Your doctor didn't learn about this in medical school. My doctors around here have been fighting me for 5 years, telling my patients I'm wrong, telling my patients they're going to overdose on vitamin D, just really bad stuff. Your doctor didn't learn about this because your doctor learned about their science through an educational system that was funded by Big Pharma. The way that the medical system has been infiltrated by all these powers, you can't get them out of this. This is just what it's become. And so your doctor didn't learn about a hormone that forms a complex with all kinds of different stuff in your body, tells your own DNA what to make. What does it increase? Well, it increases your telomeres, the little clips at the end of your DNA that people say has to do with aging. If you have a higher level of vitamin D, you'll increase an enzyme called telomerase, and you will make longer telomeres. That sounds kind of important to me. That's something that I wanted, kind of important. Definitely. This is not taught in medical school, and doctors don't believe anything that they didn't see and learn firsthand. So I still have doctors around me saying, well, vitamin D is a vitamin. It's not a vitamin, okay? This stuff's been out there for a while, and that's why I got so angry when I finally figured this out, and I called my parents' pancreatic cancer doctor. This is not a secret. Pancreatic cancer has been linked very clearly to low vitamin D over and over. And this medical doctor arrogantly is laughing, saying, oh, there's great stuff being done with vitamins these days, vitamin A and vitamin C and vitamin D, really good stuff. And I'm like, no, dude, go Google this. This is not a secret. This was 2016. Okay, this isn't like 30 years ago. So the medical paradigm, they don't believe this. Now they're starting to say, well, I recommend supplementing vitamin D because Anthony Fauci's taking it, or whatever kind of nonsense stuff. People need to know this is a thing. Vitamin D is a thing.
It's a hormone. I mean, essentially,
it's more than a hormone, because think about what this is. So you're in the sun, and how you're made is your skin's made of cholesterol. Inside your cell membranes, cholesterol is what you want. You don't want these plant fats in you.
Phytosterols, right? You don't want those in there.
You don't want these, because animals are different than plants, because we got to leave being stuck in the ground. What makes us unique as animals is cholesterol. It gives us the flexibility to have muscles and nerves, and we don't have to be attached to the earth for who we are. So, having this understanding about that cholesterol is really important. This is how your body works. So now here you are in the sun, and it's 7-dehydroxycholesterol. Cholesterol is your building molecule. It's your starter molecule. It's what estrogen, testosterone, and all these other chemicals, they all start as cholesterol. Your body can make it in any cell. Right. And it's going to modify it into different stuff. But when sunlight hits you, one bond on the B ring of carbon is broken. The radiation of the sun in the 280 to 315 wavelength range of UVB, ultraviolet B radiation, when the sun is strong enough in the sky, it will break that bond. It's happening all over you every second. And once that particular molecule is made, that is the energy of the sun that you now store in your body. And you can use that later in the season, like we always did as we migrated away from the equator. So white skin evolved because vitamin D is so important. And the only people who could survive in these northern climates were the ones with the whitest skin, because people who had darker skin, the sun wasn't strong enough to make vitamin D. So I call this a metabolic hormone. It's a fuel source or an energy source that comes from sunlight. And you cannot survive without this. Well, you can survive, but you can't thrive. So no human on this planet is going to be healthy without a lot of sun. This is one of the primary drivers of our biology. And it just so happens that this one particular chemical molecule, vitamin D, carries some interesting stuff, because when you think of cholesterol, it's a flat, planar, rigid molecule of these carbon rings. You break that one bond, and now all of a sudden, it can rotate in 2 dimensions. And so this rigid molecule is resonating, and all cholesterol resonates exactly the same, unless it's deuterated, then it'll resonate a little slower.
Okay.
But now this cholesterol that's has this resonation, this energy, it's affecting everything around it. When you break that, now it's changed, and now this is resonating in a completely different way. You now have stored the energy of the sun in this molecule. Think of a hula hoop that feels rigid, and cut it. Once you cut that, it loses this rigidity. You feel this profound physical change. That's what happens to 7-dehydroxycholesterol. And if you keep on irradiating that molecule of cholesterol, it may shift into lumestrol, which is just a little different molecule. And that's what happens if you're out in the sun too long. You don't continue to make vitamin D until you absorb too much calcium and die. There are scientists recently in studies that are saying that they're worried that people who get too much sunlight will absorb too much calcium and have calcification, they're going to die. Mother Nature would never create a system that would do that. The idea that, even just thinking about that is kind of laughable. And so that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the medical system. They don't care about this. So when you see Donald Trump, what he's on, they give you those things. Vitamin D is down here, and there's vitamin C. So at least they put it, they put it above vitamin C, because vitamin C is very important. Vitamin C helps the electron transport chain. Vitamin C is profound in how it's an antioxidant. Vitamin D is an epigenetic regulator of hormones. Vitamin D regulates what your skin's doing, what your gut microbiome is doing, regulates everything, and it regulates your sleep.
So the sleep, let me just just tie it in with the sleep, because I'm like trying to hang on.
Sorry, I'm taking you on too wild of a ride.
No. It's good. I'm absorbing it, but I'm trying to go, okay, it's with my limited understanding of sleep apnea. So what I'm trying to tie it to is what the understanding of sleep apnea is somehow related to palate shifting as we get older. This is the storyline that's out there. It's all of this palate shifting, sinus problems, and then you have weight, of course. And you're saying it has to do with the vitamin D helping truly regulate how our brain regulates the nerves that go through our head for sleep. It has nothing to do with a structural component necessarily in our palate. It has to do with nerve regulation of what is active and what is completely relaxed, if you will, if you want to put it that way. But am I hitting?
Well, okay. So remember, just because everybody believes something, that doesn't make it true.
Okay.
If I can breathe while I'm awake, I can breathe while I'm asleep. There's no structural issue. Let's just use some common sense together with science, okay? Now, when I see a 40-year-old woman who comes into my office, she's not 75 or 80, and she says to me, I've slept normally for most of my life, and now I can't sleep anymore. And I do a sleep apnea study on her, and the medical sleep doctor sends me the report, says this woman has sleep apnea, has an apnea-hypopnea index of 26. Now, we can talk about sleep apnea and what those numbers mean, because people should want to know. So I had a patient who came in and said, well, what's changed? Did my palate grow or something? And I kind of have to laugh, because when it comes to the structure can affect what's going on. This is a neurological condition, and it's happening because the part of the brain that controls the paralysis of sleep and breathing is malfunctioning, okay? The brain stem itself is not getting the right chemicals. The gut microbiome is not making the right amount of serotonin and dopamine and melatonin. It's not making the right amount of GABA. And these come from our gut microbiome. So the neurons are like, hey guys, we're trying to control sleep, but this is getting kind of hard. Okay.
Mm.
Now, you'll see studies that show the lower the vitamin D, the worse the apnea. That's absolutely true. And the
Hmm.
sad part is that kids who have apnea, terrible apnea, will be reversed in as little as 2 weeks. But no one is understanding the profound nature of this. Is this a structural disease? Not at all. If you have a deviated septum and you can't breathe through your nose, it will amplify the effects. If you have a tiny airway versus a massive airway, it's going to amplify the effects. But I have been looking at this for over 5 years in my patients, and I see the tiniest airways and the people's sleep is great. I see this massive airway, person saying, I'm choking, I can't. My wife's saying, I'm making noises and I can't stay asleep.
Right.
And so nothing in nature is of one single cause. Mother Nature doesn't work in isolation. She favors diversity and collaboration. And all these things will amplify or reduce the severity of the syndrome. That's why sleeping on your back makes apnea much worse, because your tongue will fall back right away and clog your airway. That doesn't mean it's the root cause of apnea under any conditions, because it's not. Sleep apnea is a mitochondrial disease. It's a neurological condition that doctors have been looking at. These guys are putting on hoses in people's noses and looking at the airflow. I'm like, don't waste your time. The brain's controlling the airflow, and yeah, you're going to see choking. So does that sort of help you? And we can talk about more nuts and bolts about what people experience when they start to think about sleep and sleep apnea. But hopefully that sort of, and I know there's, and people who have made comments on other shows I've been on, I'm going to stand my ground. People put, well, it's also caused by this, it's also caused by that. Sure, whatever. This information's out there. Do some people need to have surgery to widen their airways? Yeah. Does everyone? Absolutely not. I don't believe in that. Does doing orthodontics decrease apnea? It can, absolutely, but the root cause is not structural. So orthodontics and an airway can absolutely make a massive difference, especially in kids age 6, 7, 8, because they have something called long face syndrome where they're mouth breathing and it changes the structure of their jaw. So they need to have that treated with expansion. Sure, but this is a neurological disease. And if people don't want to accept that, that's okay. No one has to agree with what I'm saying. I just ask if they have children, they look into it a little deeper. You may not agree with me, but if you have kids, just
Right.
look a little deeper. Yeah, we just the tape's still wet on those. So
I gotcha.
Right.
So okay, so you had a blood test, yours was at 20.
Yeah.
I'm guessing most people's come back 30, 40 in many cases when they get a vitamin D test. So what is the goal? And then what are best ways to get the vitamin D to that level?
Okay. Well, so this is still all very hotly contested. So when I started this out, the offices, I have UCLA and USC medical group practices. The reports I used to send my patients for, it would be normal range is 30 to 100. Okay. That's a big range, 30 to 100. That's considered normal. Now, this is measured in nanograms per milliliter. If you're listening to this in Canada or somewhere else in the world, you're looking at nanomoles. And this is where it can be confusing. But if you're in America, it's all nanograms. And this is the 25-OHD test. This is a test that you will see on your lab. If you see a vitamin D2 test, I don't care about it. You see a vitamin D3 test, it's the 25-OHD. That is the storage form of vitamin D that doctors measure. And this is a good indication of your vitamin D status. So when I started testing people, many of my patients were well below 20. I had somebody who was below 10. These are people who are sick. I have people in my practice who've had cancer and didn't know about vitamin D. These are the people who get cancer. You're not going to find somebody who has a vitamin D level of 40 in cancer, because it's hard to get that level and you have to be outside exercising and doing all this stuff, eating different foods. And the root cause of cancer is a mitochondrial disease, again. And I do have videos on my website with real medical doctors. I'm just a dentist, but I have real medical doctors. You may want to dig deeper into that understanding. But so you want to have a vitamin D level always over 30. Most of the people who had the bad outcomes with the coronavirus had levels that were less. It's not the cure to the coronavirus. It's the cure to how your immune system works through the gut microbiome.
Right.
So I want my patients to never go below 40, not ever. A lot of the scientific studies show that when you hit 40, 42, 43, that's when the enzymes that your body needs to be healthy are being made in the right abundance. That's when your body finally has enough of this energy of the sun to go, okay, I need to go to my DNA and make some stuff. Phew, the levels just hit 42, 45. Now I can make whatever I want. So the vitamin D, the storage form of vitamin D is just where your body keeps it. When you need it, you activate it, and it becomes the 125 vitamin D, which is confusing. And 5 years ago, my doctors were testing the wrong one. They were testing the 125. Don't test the 125 unless you're a kidney patient, and then you kind of probably want to know what your 125 level is, but that's the activated form. And your body will activate it and shut it off anywhere it needs it in your cells as long as you have enough. So if you maintain that level up over 42, now I don't know why anyone would want to cut it close, because I still haven't seen one single death ever from vitamin D overdose, not ever. Someone out there has that study, send it to me. I'd like to see it. I will post it. But I see millions of people dying from vitamin D deficiencies every day. I see sick people, and this is really going on. So for me, if I'm going to make a mistake, I want to be too high. I want to be up over 60. For my sleep apnea patients, I want 60 to 80. That's my sleep restoration zone. I myself have gotten to a level of 100 by normal sun exposure myself. 98 was the highest I ever read. And I had just been on vacation, spent a lot of time in the sun without sunscreen, just to experiment. So I've run my level up quite high. Modern living is attacking us and lowering your vitamin D levels, because vitamin D is a metabolic hormone. If you're using it up to make these enzymes, superoxide dismutase and glutathione, and you're repairing your body, if your body is being attacked more, you need more vitamin D. Now, in the old days, when humans were hunter-gatherers and you were more active, it was during the day and you were hunting, gathering, walking around looking for water. So you're expending all this extra energy and you're wearing out your body, you're burning more calories, you're getting these reactive oxygen species being produced, and you need those antioxidant enzymes. Well, this was all being done outside. And there was never a time in evolutionary history where you could be doing extra work and not be outside. Sure, maybe occasionally at night, whatever. But for the most part, humans would go out during the daytime. People are sitting in their basements. They already have a low vitamin D level. They wear sunscreen, they eat carbohydrates, they avoid the sun between 10 and 3. And now they're being bombarded by Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and 5G. And 5G, yeah, it's radiation. Radiation is dangerous. If you're going to be in front of radiation, you want to have your antioxidants. You want to have a lot of sulfur in your body, because sulfur will reduce radiation damage. These are things that were natural to us. But now people are stuck in their basement with their Zoom calls and their Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and our D levels are dropping. So you really want to have a higher level. People who choke all night in their sleep, they are stuck in their fight or flight all night long. I wrote an article called Fight or Flight at Night. When you have sleep apnea and you stop breathing, your tongue falls back in your throat, you stop breathing, and your body sends off an alarm. Hey, dude, we're choking. And then you release cortisol, adrenaline, your body wakes up, and then you go and do it again. It's like someone's putting a pillow over your face over and over all night long. That's when you're supposed to be resting. So you just used up all your recovery time, and your body literally doesn't know that you're lying safely in bed. It thinks there's a lion or a tiger chasing you. So those who have apnea, their low vitamin D level starts it off, but once they start to choke in their sleep, it just plummets. And people with low, they put CPAPs on people and they said their vitamin D level came up. I'd like to look at that. I've looked at the details of that study, kind of interesting stuff, but it makes sense to me. If you're not choking all night long, then you are not going to burn through your metabolic hormone.
Sure. Okay.
All right, did that help put the pieces back?
I think so. You said people want to get tested as D3, because some people do test the D2, but you want the D3 tested.
Yeah, I don't care about D2. D2 is put artificially into milk and juice at only 100 IU. So when people I used to start to ask people about their vitamin D level, and they say, my vitamin D level is just fine, thank you very much. I drink milk. I'm like, well, milk only has 100 IU. It's vitamin D2, and it's kind of not the kind that, it's plant vitamin D. So yeah, vitamin D3 is the only kind you can buy. If you go to the store and you see a 1,000 IU international units, it should be about 1,000 international units per 25 pounds. That's a really good rule of thumb. Still important to test twice a year, in my opinion, or more. If you are really low and then you want to start to dose yourself, get a couple of tests. You can test at home now. So on a daily basis, what you should take for your body's activity, the studies that I've seen show you burn through, I'm going to say 3,000 to 5,000 IU every day. If you're much more active, you're going to burn through more vitamin D. You're going to need more, but presumably you're outside. Theory in the old days.
Right.
So that's maybe a valuable, and if you have kids, it's still safe. I have on my ebook that everyone can download from my website. I have all different studies. I have highest level of vitamin D, all kinds of stuff, like toxicity in children. And I have the actual scientific studies that are linked to PubMed, which is the research website. So all the stuff that I'm saying may sound crazy, but you can find all this research. You can find it simply through my ebook with the direct links, but you can Google this stuff on PubMed on your own. This is all verifiable stuff.
Gotcha. Okay, so the source then would be the sun or a D3 supplement. It's really not attainable, D3 specifically, through food or through.
The best diet, if you eat a lot of fatty fish, you're still going to have a hard time. As far as I'm concerned, the Inuit ate a lot of whale blubber. They're all good.
Right.
That's fine. But that's why you can survive with darker skin at higher latitudes if you're getting your vitamin D through food sources. I don't think people are eating enough fatty fish to begin with. You're not going to get your vitamin D from food.
Or fat in general. Yeah. Would you have it in there? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Of good fat, of the saturated fats. So, and then the K2 works in there with as a catalyst with that?
So vitamin K2 is a cofactor. Last time I checked, for 17 different enzymes. So an enzyme is the worker bee of your cell, and sometimes enzymes need cofactors to turn them off and on. Now, vitamin K2 is very different than vitamin K1, and vitamin K2 is related to calcium. So when in the old days, when you're out in the sun, you get a lot of vitamin D, the grass is green, you get your K2 from grass-fed animals. The greener the grass, the higher the K2. You get it from their milk. That goes back to Weston Price. Activator X was buttermilk or butterfat. So K2, once vitamin D, and this is how it works, vitamin D will tell your genes to make more calcium ion transporters, folded proteins that will go into your colonocytes to bring in more calcium. Vitamin D will also signal more calcium transporting proteins. And then once that calcium gets into your body, it has to be put away into your own personal calcium bank, your bones and your teeth. So vitamin K2 is required to activate two specific enzymes or proteins that will take calcium out of your blood and put it into the matrix of bone. For the scientific people, it's matrix GLA protein and osteocalcin. Osteocalcin is an enzyme that's in your mouth, because if you have calcium, you want to have that calcium put into the matrix of your teeth. And teeth and bones, lots of calcium. So in the summer, we used to really, pardon the goofiness, we used to bone up on our calcium, and we'd store it in our bones. And then throughout the winter, once we started to run out of calcium, we'd start to pull the calcium out of our bones. And this is done by osteoblasts, osteoclasts, same way we move teeth around in the mouth. These days, a lot of people, especially older women, are suffering from osteoporosis. And instead of giving them vitamin K2, their doctors put them on these bone medications that are unnatural, and they end up with this acellular bone, this kind of damaging. Vitamin K2 prevents osteoporosis. So that's where that is. Now, does vitamin K2 play a part in signaling your own genes? I think so. Dr. Stasha Gomanak thinks so, because vitamin D doesn't act alone. It acts with other cofactors, because it's like vitamin D is the keys to the kingdom. It's going to say, hey, what does this body need? And the signals are the cofactors. They'll say, hey, we're low in this. So those different signaling molecules will help come together to get the right DNA to open up and for you to transcribe those genes and make copies of those particular areas on your DNA. So it's a very complex system. It forms a heterodimer. It's like all this like very sciencey stuff. And the truth is, I don't know that I trust anyone. Very few people, because there's very few experts who are not so influenced by traditional medicine that they're brainwashed on this. Peter Attia, I heard a podcast 2 years ago about vitamin D, and he was like, nah, not that important. And I remember just sort of thinking, he's like one of the smartest people on the planet. And his training has brainwashed him to this idea that it couldn't be that important because I don't know about it. That's the scary part. Okay.
Right.
So, this is the perspective that I have on this. And then if you look at every single study done since 1990, 1991, there's another factor in all these scientific studies, and this is a chemical called glyphosate. It profoundly impacts our health, and no one's measuring it. It's in everything you eat, and this is bad stuff. And that's where we get into the whole, is Monsanto and those companies. Monsanto now was bought by Bayer.
Right.
And so now I kind of like to joke that now they brought everything in-house. The company that makes the poisons that basically are killing us is now owned by the company that makes the medication to hide the symptoms of the poisoning. And, this is all related to how our bodies work and what's going wrong with, modern foods. You can't take the glyphosate out of it. So it's always there in the background. But, look at different studies. If they've been taking vitamin D levels on people, like if they do a study on heart disease, you don't know all those people, they all have low vitamin D levels because no one's thinking about this, but this has been left out. All the studies from all these different things, and to anyone who's looked at this and said, well, there's a meta-analysis where they said, vitamin D is really not that useful. And that's, doctors really go by these meta-analyses where they basically someone takes all the literature and puts it together and says, do we see a significant finding? They did a meta-analysis 2 years ago and like vitamin D, not that important. I would beg to differ because as I got into my research, I started to look at these scientific studies. And when it comes to vitamin D, if you don't take a blood level, throw the study out. Half of those studies never took a blood level. Imagine if you were going to dose your testosterone, you're going to inject testosterone and you never had a blood level. You're like, well, we gave some. This is really the problem that happened is such a profound mistake in our medical system that every single thing that you look at, there's a vitamin D component there. And, that's just the way it is. And you don't have to believe in this, but, one of my catchphrases, you can't fool Mother Nature. So, you got to really understand that the people who are supposed to be taking care of us, even though all of the doctors that I know are good people, they really believe in what they do, they've been given false information and they're giving you instructions from the wrong playbook. They have this playbook that they learned in medical school, and these are the wrong instructions. This isn't how our bodies operate. We've been misled. And that's what I want to share. Someone like yourself figured this out. A lot of guys out there figured this out. And I want to bring this into the mainstream because children today are suffering. People contact me from around the world asking me these questions like, I had my colon removed and I've never had a vitamin D test. So I'm like, well, this is terrifying. And this is happening right now. If you have a child who's being surgerized for tonsils or whatever, I reached out to my local doctors. They don't understand. They're sending these kids for tonsillectomies. I'm like, okay, but what's their vitamin D level? Well, tonsil size is inversely proportional to vitamin D status. The bigger the tonsils, the lower the vitamin D level. Before I subject a child to a surgical procedure that I would consider mutilation, at a minimum, I'd want to know that at that surgical procedure, they wouldn't get a post-op or hospital infection. Because who do you think gets hospital infections? People with low vitamin D. The idea that to this day, you go into surgery and they'll give you 1 million IU, 500,000 IU bolus injection. This is terrifying. There's a few guys out there who've been trying to do this. There's one guy who did a podcast on Vitamin D Council. He's like, we figured this out. I give my patients 4 days before surgery, I give them an injection of 1 million IU of vitamin D. They don't die. They don't get calcified.
1 million. Wow. Yeah. I mean, they're dosing to stay in their system. They're going to absorb it. They're going to store it.
Well, so here's the thing is that and this guy maybe was giving vitamin K2, maybe, I don't really know. But the point is that what they found is that it took that 4th day for enough vitamin D to be activated and to upregulate the production of these antimicrobial proteins and to activate the immune system itself and everything. 4 days to make a massive difference between somebody who's going to get a hospital infection. I had a patient who had MRSA twice, methicillin resistant staph aureus. I had it twice. Why? My vitamin D level was well below 20. Okay, so that's why I got it. What is flesh-eating bacteria? Who gets that? I guarantee you, the people who get flesh-eating bacteria, how does that bacteria turn so nasty? The opportunistic infection, it overgrows. So people who get that, I had a patient, she lost half her face. We did a whole reconstruction for her. It was going to be on the doctors, but it didn't make it on. And when we finally tested her vitamin D level, it was below 20. She had sleep apnea. It wasn't a surprise to me, but this is a really big mistake that medicine has made, and it impacts everything.
They're overlooking the immune system. They're completely undermining it, actually.
Wait, they are, and this is the reason. If you're watching this in lockdown at home, this is the reason. The reason is because your doctor didn't learn about what vitamin D is. Your doctor didn't learn about Weston Price and what he discovered. Simple stuff. Don't eat industrial seed oils. Don't eat carbohydrates. Don't eat processed foods. Don't eat sugar. eat animals, nose to tail, eat high fat foods that are
Right.
high in the fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K.
Right.
This is just common sense, and here we are 80 years later, and now I'm under lockdown. This is affecting me in my life. And this is all because this paradigm of epigenetics never made it out there. And
Right.
now we're literally suffering the consequences of failed medical paradigm. And this
Right.
is not going to change. If they could have made a flu vaccine, they would have done it already. Flu's been around for a while. So just, keep that. So it's going to be therapies
Right.
and different medications that people are going to make a lot of money on. This is always all about money. And that's really what it is. People who work for big pharma, big food, these are just regular people trying to make a living. And it's all about money. That's it.
Yeah.
All comes down to we're killing ourselves. We're poisoning the planet for money. Good times.
Okay, so
Sorry to bring that
wow,
down.
no, I mean it's true, but we need to limit. I'm thinking of action steps. We need to limit deuterium and limit glyphosate as much as possible because the dose. It's hard. You can't completely eliminate these things because they occur. Glyphosate occurs in our food system. Deuterium just occurs in nature, and we just got to go for the foods that have less of it.
You want to reduce them.
How do we get to K2? What's the sources for those?
So K2 you can get in a Japanese bean curd fermented. It's called natto, and it's kind of slimy. You can buy it at most local stores or health food stores, or you can buy a supplement. And K2 is something I supplement with every day. I tried natto. It's kind of gross. But that's the one thing I want to have in abundance. You can get it from some hard cheeses. It's found in the sternum of, bones of grass-fed animals. No one's spending the money on this stuff because, you can't patent this.
What is now? Would it be in all fermented foods? Would it be in like kimchi or sauerkraut?
To my knowledge, neither the kimchi may or may not have a discernible amount of K2, but natto is the one that I feel confident saying.
Natto, okay. And you had mentioned milk before, so fermented
raw milk for cheeses and from grass-fed animals.
What am I thinking of? Fermented milk. The I'm talking about. It's like yogurt, but
yogurt. Yogurt is really good. And kefir,
kefir. That's the one I was thinking of. Kefir is not as much as natto.
All these fermented foods, they have microbes that are good for us. All humanity, all hunter-gatherers, all civilizations use fermented foods for drinks, for alcohol, to keep water safe. These bacteria, they'll kill the bad bacteria, keep the good ones. So, this is part of our biology.
Okay. Liver and egg yolks. How are those for what we're talking about here?
Well, they're great for nutrient density. I would assume liver would have some vitamin K2 in it. I tried to drill down into, how many B vitamins foods have. And no one spent money on this. If there's labs who've done these deep investigations into the real nutritional content of grass-fed organic liver, it's not easily posted. And, part of what I want to do is open the door to research in these fields where we can, instead of having this skewed, heavy hand saying we're going to make a chemical that's going to integrate with this one enzyme and we're going to make billions, start to understand that we need to spend some research money on the stuff that's going to keep us healthy. And I think we're at that time now. I know that at some point, a health and wellness company is going to want to work with someone like me with my sleep restoration program, what I know. And as we move forward, someone like myself, someone like yourself, your personality is what's important, who you are, what's your trajectory. Tell me about your career, because when you see stuff now being posted, I work here in Manhattan Beach, and I bought some Tesla stock when I read Elon Musk's autobiography. And so I was like, follow what's going on. I saw this article in Tesla, and I really read the fine print. And said this article was generated from an algorithm off the NASDAQ. And I said, great, I just read an article that was not written by a human. And so it kind of made me realize that this is our future. Algorithms are already affecting you. They're doing it every day. You don't know it. So as we move forward, this type of health information, the type of things that I'm saying, you want to argue with me that I'm wrong. You want to call out that I said this instead of that, do it all day long. But know that I'm a real person with a 30-year career as a clinician. I'm doing this because I care. I suffered for no reason other than greed. And I am in a position and I have the authority to want to help make this change. So someone like yourself, someone like myself, when people read what I have to say, you don't have to agree, but know that it wasn't a bot that made this. Know that you see people who are going to attack me. Who's funding this? Well, the people who stand to lose most from what I'm saying. Big pharma and big food and the agrochemical, petrochemical conglomerate of God knows whatever deep state, whoever's running the show, whatever nonsense you want to believe in. But we can make the choices in our daily lives by choosing to shop at places that use regenerative agriculture. We can make the choices to buy products that are made sustainably, locally. You want to buy local. You don't want the deuterium from something that was made down at the equator where there's a lot more of it. You want to be farm to table. You want to support your local businesses, because when you support the industries that are good for you as a person, for your own biology, those are the companies that will start to make money. Nothing happens in this life if there's no money involved. And when we start to spend our money on those real companies, then those are the ones that are going to make the change. And when you do that, you're going to save yourself, and you literally will be saving the planet. Now, everyone has to be careful that all these big, this isn't happening in a vacuum. You will notice that all of your cereals and all of your cookies and crackers are now branded plant-based. They're not saying organic. They're not saying non-GMO. They're not saying no glyphosate. They're saying plant-based. You can go buy your detergent now. Instead of a bright orange box, now you'll see it in muted tones. Oh, look at this. It's the same damn product, but now it's plant-based, and they're just all marketing scam, guys. That's it. So the big industry that controls us, they have a stranglehold over our health. They're making products that are killing us. And this is our time to really try and take back our health. We've been fooled many times before. Weston Price wasn't listened to in the late 30s. Ansel Keys got his way in the 60s, and now it translated to the 80s. The plant-based movements, the idea that it's cruelty to animals and farming is good, this is a terrible amount of disinformation. People need to be very careful what they believe when they're reading this stuff, because farming is not good for this planet, and it's certainly not monocrop mega farms with all these herbicides and fertilizers. If you don't have an animal, you don't have a farm. Sorry, that's it. That's how Mother Nature figured it out.
The nitrogen they have to spray on these fields to regenerate. Actually, comes off and creates a very very high heat holding gas. As far as greenhouse gases, we get more. The most detrimental greenhouse gas comes from the nitrogen that they spray on these, because they don't have animals defecating on the soil.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah. So the problem is that carbon is not being fixed into the soil like we need it to. Carbon is soil is a massive carbon sink, and Mother Nature, she created grassland. She didn't create deserts. Desert exists because of climatic patterns, but we're screwing up the soil. Look at a map of America and see where all the stuff's being farmed. Everything's being made, and these GMO crops, they're being made into everything, our cotton, our processed stuff, the packaging. This toxic shit is being put into everything. And this little tiny chemical, and the glyphosate's a whole different podcast, but you just need to know that what you can't see can and is hurting you. It is. And so, okay, I want to give some people some takeaway stuff. Okay, number one, I want to talk about sleep. If you can't shut down your racing mind, it's not you. If you have insomnia once in a while, when something happened and you can't get down for sleep, that's normal. Every night, if you can't fall asleep and stay asleep, you have a biochemical issue. It's not your mind. The body-mind connection is too hard to separate. You don't have the right chemicals to put you into sleep. Simple as that. Do you think you have sleep apnea? Probably not. Sleep apnea is the syndrome and diagnosis of those people who sleep poorly for so long that the part of the brain that controls sleep permanently breaks down, and now they need real treatment. No vitamin D in the world is going to get your sleep back once the cells of your brain that are regulating sleep have been choked, hypoxia, enough of the brain cells die. This is a problem that will set in. If you have a child who has sleep apnea, it's going to reverse almost immediately. If you have a child that grinds their teeth loudly, snores, wets the bed, has ADD issues, this child is profoundly vitamin D deficient. Your pediatrician isn't testing this. They didn't learn about this. They don't, not that they don't care. They can't get their mind around it. I was not greeted with any type of welcome to the doctors I reached out at. They did not care that I'm doing this because I care. They did not care because I'm seeing their patients in my office with terrible decay, an infection at the corners of the mouth called angular cheilitis that's caused a fungal infection in the mouth because they're vitamin D deficient. Do I think every single thing that goes wrong with our bodies is a vitamin D deficiency? Just about, just about.
Wow.
And I have lots of evidence to support that. So, so that's number one. If you don't sleep properly, number one, get a vitamin D test. Number two, if you're over the age of 20 and you haven't slept poorly, you haven't slept well for a long time, get a sleep study, guys. I offer them at my practice for $150 cash if someone wants to take a sleep study home. This is information everyone should be thinking about. Your sleep tracker may or may not tell you what's what. If you have sleep apnea, don't avoid it. The longer you have it untreated, the worse it's going to get. Do something about it, because you will end up with that CPAP mask. That will be your fate. And to anyone who doesn't want to listen to my information, it's okay. That's your fate, is CPAP. I didn't make this up. I wish it wasn't the truth. Okay.
Right.
If you go on a CPAP, it's not a death sentence. You can be off that in 2 years if you want to change how your body is reacting to things. So sleep apnea is not permanent. It's not a chronic disease caused by obesity. The obesity comes on from your body being stuck in permanent winter, trying to save itself. Some of the people who've been trying to diet and get in shape are some of the strongest hunter-gatherers. Their bodies will not let them get rid of that evolutionary life preserver, that vitamin D fat. That's what that is. So sleep, if you're not sleeping right, it's bad news on every level. Get a vitamin D test. Look at some of my videos. Go investigate Stasha Gomanak. She's incredible. When it comes to what you eat, they cannot put glyphosate on grass. The grass dies, but they can put it on everything else. You can be eating olives that have glyphosate because they're spraying the weeds. Can't trust anything. So the food sources that are the healthiest and safest, the lowest in deuterium, and probably glyphosate, are meat, grass-fed meat. I'm not a big fan of chicken or pork unless the pork is completely wild, grazed, and was eating acorns or whatever pigs are really supposed to eat. When you eat a chicken or a pig, corn, grain, or soy that has deuterium and glyphosate, you're eating what they ate. You are what you eat eats, and you need to pay attention. Ruminants were the food that we evolved to live on. Any ruminants these are the kosher foods. These are the split hoof food animals that regurgitate and chew their cud. They all eat green grass. Green grass is very low in deuterium, very low. So they start with a deuterium depleted source to begin with. Then they start to digest this food, and as it goes into their digestive system, the bacteria are taking the deuterium away. Bacteria feed off deuterium, and by the time the actual hydrocarbon food gets into their body fat, some of the lowest deuterium, lowest glyphosate foods that you can have. That's why eating red meats, fatty red meats, organ meats, and animal products, nose to tail, is the healthiest, safest thing that you can eat. It's the exact opposite of what doctors are telling us.
Right.
And that's the real truth. My patients, I love them dearly. When I say, what do you eat? I just want to get a feeling. I'm not going to tell them unless they didn't come to me to get a nutrition lesson. They can read my book. They came to me because they trust me as a dentist, and they say things like, it breaks my heart, I eat clean, I eat healthy. What does that include? Lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, lots of beans, lots of oatmeal. I cut out my red meat and I focus on lean chicken. And I'm like, oh, and
yeah, 180. You need to do a complete 180.
Complete. So that's it. And
Yeah.
that's why you're going to see more of the carnivore diet, Paul Saladino, all this stuff, super cool stuff. But the good news is that when we focus on regenerative farming and having these animals, you can get great vegetables,
right?
And they'll be way healthier with way more flavor, be way less toxins, and you're going to put carbon out of the environment, into the soil. You're going to make the soil healthier, and you're going to make yourself healthier. If you don't like eating gross stuff, go to nosetotale.org and buy some food where it's already been ground up. Go to some of these great companies, because I don't like that stuff. My mom used to make liver. I hated it. Yeah. But give me a hamburger. If it tastes good, I'm going to eat it. Give me a lettuce wrap burger all day long. So that's what I'd be eating. I like cheese. I like all dairy products, but I only eat grass-fed organic dairy products because those animals, if you feed them high GMO, high glyphosate stuff, it's going to be in their cheese. Sorry.
Right,
that's just the way it is.
Right.
So I stick to seafood, preferably not farm, because, well, some of the places where seafood's farm, what are they feeding the
corn?
Corn. Okay. So that's kind of, and then the feasting and fasting. I love the, just the idea that for poor people, I've been a binge eater my whole life. I was addicted to sugar for 48 years. If you're a binge eater and you feed yourself like we do know this, that food is the most important thing you can put in your body besides air. So of course, Mother Nature is going to tie a feeling of pleasure to it. You should enjoy your food, but you really appreciate it when you don't eat all day, or you have a period where your body resets itself and you taste the quality of that food. Feasting and fasting, that's how we evolve. That is what we should be doing. This is what our bodies really want us to do. And it really resets everything. We have this tolerance of everything. You get used to it. You're eating 3 meals a day. It's not special anymore. You don't eat for a week. That first meal, that's amazing what you put into your body. Like that's such great stuff. So, and once you get used to fasting, you could eat anything you want to break a fast. What do I break a fast with? Nothing that has deuterium or glyphosate. The first thing I put in my body, preferably, would be oysters from somewhere where I knew there'd be less of these toxins. Maybe, looking at the global currents. Ground meat, a steak. I'll go to my favorite grass-fed organic steakhouse, and that's what I want to eat. So, should you do that right away? No, your body has to get used to feasting and fasting. But I love when I break my fast. I'm going to put in. Your body's just waiting. It got rid of all that crap through autophagy, and now the first thing you put in your body, don't make it white rice, guys. Don't make it white rice. I love Jason Fung. He's a Canadian nephrologist, another Canadian. Love him. He does all the fasting books. Genius and brilliant guy.
Yes.
And so what am I going to put in my body? Just, whatever I believe is going to be the most absolute purest food. It's going to be red meat, going to be ruminant meat. Maybe it's going to be, some grass-fed cheese and that. So
gotcha.
That's what I do with that. So
how much sun exposure do you get?
Well, so for anyone who lives north of the line between Atlanta and Los Angeles, it's over. You can download an app called the D-Minder app. Yeah, you can see when you're available to make vitamin D. That ship has sailed for most of the Northern Hemisphere. Hence, that's why we might see some spiking of COVID, say, in the Northern Hemisphere. And then Australia, New Zealand, it's going to disappear. People were getting their vitamin D walking from their car to the office, to the mall. Everyone's on lockdown now. So sun exposure, look at the D-Minder app will tell you when you can make vitamin D. The amount of vitamin D you make on your skin is dependent on many different factors. You will find this on my ebook, the D determinants, the latitude, skin exposed, your skin tone, the amount of area exposed. You should always go outside every day, a couple of times throughout the day. Let the sun hit your eyes, let your body know that you're alive. Sure, it's not sunny every day, so you don't have to be outside 24/7, but be out in the morning for the sunrise, watching the sunset. The different signals, they really affect our circadian biology, very important things. I highly recommend to all people to wear blue blocking glasses past 8 p.m. Why? Blue light has been classified as a 2A carcinogen. How? Blue light destroys the production of melatonin. When blue light goes in your eyes, it immediately stops melatonin production. That's your sleep hormone, but it's also the most powerful antioxidant that all life on this planet uses to detoxify cancer. Melatonin is the anti-sun hormone. It only comes out in pure darkness. And prior to fire, us mastering fire, there was no light at night. Prior to the electric light bulb, we didn't have to worry about all these things destroying our melatonin. So blue blockers at night. So get a vitamin D level up over 50 or 60, check into your sleep, eat a lot of high-fat animal products, avoid processed food, get natural sunlight, expose as much of your body as you can legally, and separate yourself from a lot of that. I took the TV out of my bedroom. I don't have any. I can sometimes, if I want to listen to something to distract me, I can hear it in the other room, but I'm not going to have that light. It can affect light on your skin. It's going to tell your microbes, oh, it's lunchtime.
Right.
All these signals are really profound, and so
Gotcha.
those are the easy things that everyone can do within reason.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you. I know I appreciate your time. We did a huge download here. This has been tremendous, and I appreciate you taking the time to do it. We're going to link to your ebook with the characters you were talking about behind you in the show notes and on the YouTube video, and your website as well. But I appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to the book. I know this is going to coming out in a book in time. Hopefully within a few months. It's called what again?
So when I wrote this book over the past couple of years, it's called The Modern Epidemic, but I had to
Okay.
rewrite it after COVID because it just the tone was very different. So my book's called The Modern Epidemic, but I also have
Okay.
the characters behind me are the heroes of light. So as a doctor, my website is Modern American Dentistry. I'm a dentist, but I have my fun website called MHG Modern Hunter Gatherer. Your and my biology is that of a hunter gatherer, but we live in the modern world. What do you want to do? You want to be a modern hunter gatherer. And that's the fun website that I have where you can learn about the things that your body should have. And that's where you can sign up for my book. If you put in your email address, you'll immediately get the PDF that is the entire ebook. It's about 100 pages. It's an interactive ebook that I created because half of what I'm saying sounds stupid and ridiculous. But when I say these things and it starts to get confusing, I'm going to take you on a link to show you the origins of glyphosate and tell you how this all happened. So this ebook is my calling card. This lays out my real estate, all my cartoon characters. And I have, a couple of books that I've developed. And this is a new paradigm. This is the space that you're in. This is the space that I'm in. This is about a health revolution. Behind me, you see it hasn't fallen yet, but that's my poster for Revolution Radio. And you can see the R is in white, but the evolution is the important part of that poster, That's my new podcast, Revolution Radio. You can, find me on my podcast. I'm hosting everything on my website because I know things are getting filtered from YouTube. The things that talk about stuff that maybe, is not the standard.
Absolutely.
So, and anyone can Google me. I'm at that exciting stage of my career where, nobody has wanted to partner with me yet. And so I'm still get to do kind of what I want. This is exciting. And, I still respond to my own Instagram and that type of stuff. And really looking forward to helping share what I discovered in the most meaningful way possible to help people reclaim their health and understand that, it's not your fault. You've been doing all these things that your doctor's been telling you. It's not working because of the wrong instructions. These are the wrong instructions. You have not been given the human animals owner's manual. And that's hopefully what a little bit of my books and my information is about. And for people who don't want to read this, don't want to know, just give me the basics. That's why I have different tiers. That's why I have my Heroes of Light cartoon characters, because they can tell this story in a fun way without you having to learn anything. I wouldn't want to make anyone learn anything they don't want to learn.
Right. Heaven forbid.
Right.
Unfortunately, someone on a podcast is probably looking for information and likes learning. So you're on the right platform for sure. And YouTube as well, for that matter. So thankfully, we have a base of people who are looking for more answers for their health because they know they've been failed by the current healthcare system. It's just not working. Everything's getting worse. So as far as all the diseases you mentioned, they're all metabolic disease and they're all getting worse worldwide.
All the same root cause. All the same root cause.
All the same root cause.
Yeah.
Wow.
Awesome. Yeah, and just and then so the reason glyphosate's always in my talks is because that lowers your vitamin D level. So there's people walking around on this planet who are taking vitamin D or going in the sun, and when they go get a test, their level's low, and the doctor's like, "Well, the level's low. What are you eating? If you're eating high glyphosate foods, you are destroying the enzyme, the CYP enzyme, that is the one that's supposed to activate vitamin D in your body to the 25-OHD form to store. So this is a complex set of stuff, and just know that it's going to take a while for this information to come out. And I wanted to give people the visuals of what to be when you hear these words. What is this? I can't wait for people to see my video game, deuterium depletion, where your goal is to destroy deuterium and glyphosate before it tears open Marty mitochondria's inner membrane and humanity dies, guys. We're in a battle to save the planet.
Awesome. That's great. It helps people understand it when you can put it into those different formats. People can kind of tie in without taking biochemistry. They can tie in the mechanism of how these things affect our bodies and energy and as you mentioned, our genetic code right down to our genes. So that's amazing.
I listen to all these podcasts. I'm really into this. And sometimes I have to pause them and Google something. So if you're listening to a podcast, you don't understand, this is a good thing. It's good to learn stuff. I think it's great.
Oh yeah. It's awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate all your time. And I can't wait to listen to this again, just to pick out the things I know that flew by, because this is a major topic. I want to be able to even speak proficiently on it, but this is action packed. So I'll link to those to your website. It's the best way to get the ebook, is what it sounds like. Go to your website and download it there.
Yep. Download
and then
it there.
and I know you're active on Instagram, so that's awesome too. So I'll put that in there.
Yeah, for sure. As well. You know, and anybody who heard this podcast, I did list out the experts whose work that I learned from. I'm a clinician, I'm a regular person, and these are my tribal elders. They are featured on my podcast, Revolution Radio. I've interviewed a lot of them. And so I'm not trying to hijack anyone's information. I'm trying to share and amplify the message that these incredible scientists discovered. And I really can't wait for people to discover, you know, this is a paradigm where people are falling out of what they used to believe in, and they're stumbling into something new, whether it's paleo or keto. I wanted to tie this together and make it a little more interesting and more fun to, you know, bring this together. And that's why I've made this multimedia. That's why my cartoon characters sing. I have dance stuff. So trying to bring it out into popular culture to make sure that it stays this time.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks again. All right. We'll have to have you back when the book comes out, and we can dig into a little more of glyphosate as well. So
no worries.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Well, have a great rest of your day out there in Manhattan Beach. I know it's a beautiful area. So I will talk to you soon.